The Senate will come to order. All those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. Those in the gallery and those on the floor will please rise as we led in prayer by Tanner Keene. He is a Herndon intern placed with the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Please remain standing after the prayer as the senator from Monongalia leads us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Keene.
Heavenly Father, we come before you in this great and beautiful chamber, aware that the greatness and the beauty of this chamber and the authority that it represents still ultimately pales in comparison to the beauty and greatness and authority of your chamber. And so we come before you humbly, asking that in spite of our own human limitations, you would give us your help. I ask that you would grant this body wisdom in all of its deliberations, patience in all of its debates, and that everything that would be said or done in this chamber today would be done in a way that acknowledges the image of you that you created in every West Virginian. We ask all of this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Senator from Monongalia.
Good morning. Please join with me as we salute our nation. I pledge allegiance
Reading of the Journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, February 22nd, 2021. The Senate met at 11 a.m. Senator Blair, Mr. President, in the chair.
The senator from Summers requests unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and the journal be approved. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Further reading of the journal is dispensed with and the journal is approved. Introduction of guests. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it is your pleasure and mine to introduce our doc of the day. In the rear of the chamber, we have with us Dr. Michael Amos. He's a second-year family medicine resident from Canova, West Virginia, lifelong West Virginia resident. If this doctor wouldn't mind standing, let Senate give you a warm welcome.
Further introductions. Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. Happy to have with us here today, watching virtually, an AARP volunteer from Roncevert, Mr. Danny Gray, my neighbor. If the Senate would make Danny feel welcome as he participates virtually today. Thank you.
Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 2008, amending requirements for licensure relating to elevator mechanics, crane operators, HVAC electricians, and plumbers.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
House Bill 2253, relating to forgery and other crimes concerning lottery tickets.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 80, allowing for administration of certain small estates by affidavit and without appointment of personal representative, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 2019, elevating economic development and tourism departments, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
The report will be received. Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of the bills. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 397 through Senate Bill 432 be considered and introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
The Senior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill 397 through Senate Bill 432 be considered and introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Joint Resolution 9 by Senator Smith, Disabled Veterans Exemption from Ad Valorem Property Taxation Amendment.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary and then the Committee on Finance.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 8 by Senator Takubo, naming the Fire Chief Kenneth Jr. Russell Memorial Bridge.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Motions. Petitions.
There are none.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Typo, go ahead.
Unfinished business.
There is none.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 1, providing for parity of payment for telehealth services between service in person and service provided through telehealth platform. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1 requires PEIA, Medicaid, and other insurances to provide reimbursement for telehealth service at a negotiated rate between the provider and the insurance company for virtual telehealth encounters after July 1st, 2021. The bill requires PEIA and other insurance companies to provide reimbursement for telehealth services on the same basis and at the same rate under a contract, plan, agreement, or policy as if the service is provided through an in-person encounter after July 1st, 2021, commonly referred to as parity payment for telehealth services. The bill also adds a definition for interstate telehealth services as meaning the provision of telehealth services to a patient located in West Virginia by a healthcare practitioner located in any other state or Commonwealth of the United States. The bill sets forth a registration process for a practitioner who practices telehealth and permits emergency rulemaking. The bill also strikes audio-only telephone calls from the portion of the definition of excluding this medium from the definition of telehealth services. The bill permits the physician-patient relationship to be started via audio-only calls or conversations that occur in real time. The bill also adds a requirement that a patient's records be transmitted to the patient's primary care physician, and if no physician is identified, then no obligation to send these records exists. Lastly, Mr. President, the bill places restrictions on the use of telehealth medicine platform. The patient shall visit a primary care physician within 12 months of using the initial telemedicine service, or the telemedicine service shall no longer be available until an in-person visit is obtained. The bill prohibits a physician who participates in telemedicine from prescribing medications listed in Schedules 3 through 5 of the Uniform Controlled Substances Act. There's an exception for this when the physician has a physician-patient relationship of 1 year, and this applies to the group practice. Mr. President, I urge passage of this bill.
Question is passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this bill. We've been through this pandemic, and I congratulate the health chairman for including so many people's input on this. And it's a well thought out bill. It will provide access to a certain population of patients that currently don't have broadband but can do audio only in certain cases. At the same time, there was safety mechanisms put in because we know that audio only is not as good as in-person visits. So again, I think this bill is well thought out, well-meaning, and has a real focus on patient care. And that's what we're about here. And we learned a lot during this pandemic about whether or not broadband was available in rural areas. We're working on that. I know you are, Mr. President. And that the need for audio only in certain cases where a patient is elderly, cannot get to the doctor's office, does not have a good support system, good transportation issues. So this really helps, and I applaud the chairman and I urge adoption.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Marshall wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, telemedicine was coming on a very fast train over the past 5 to 10 years, and the pandemic basically put it on a bullet train. It's even faster. This is a bill that needs to pass the West Virginia legislature this year. It needs to pass the Senate, it needs to pass the House, the governor needs to sign it. The bill might not end up being perfect. It's better than what we currently have, and I urge passage of this bill.
Question is, excuse me. The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On the question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk has the title amendment.
Senator Maroney moved to amend the title of the bill.
The question is on adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 12 relating to local health department accountability. The bill was advanced to third reading with the right to amend.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Maroney moved to amend the bill on page 10, section 11, line 69, after the word disease.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Marshall requests unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment that I'm offering is basically it provides for the Commissioner of the Bureau of Public Health to establish an appeal process by which adverse determinations from local health departments may be appealed. So basically what this does is in this bill, there's a process, the bill it changes the process by which way these local ordinances are made into laws or rules, and after they're ratified by the appointing authority, which this bill defines, if the outcome is adverse to a citizen or an organization or a group or a business, this just defines an appeal process for them. I would urge adoption of this amendment.
Is there discussion? If not, the question before is the adoption of the amendment offered by the Senator from Marshall. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and I declare the amendment accepted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Carnes moved to amend the bill on page 11, section 11, lines 85 and 86 by striking out the words, is not subject to approval unless amended from and inserting in lieu thereof The words shall be reviewed and approved, amended and approved or disapproved within 10 years by.
Senator from Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a brief explanation of
The senator from Randolph requests unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of this amendment is actually, I believe, to perfect this bill. The principle behind this bill is to make sure that our nation is a nation of laws that are created by lawmakers that have been voted on by the people. The purpose of this bill is to reintroduce people who have had an opportunity to stand before the voters, and this amendment perfects that by insisting that rules that are currently existent are also approved by people who have stood before the voters, by requiring that rules that were adopted before the effective date of this law will also have to be approved by the county commissioners or approving authority.
Is there discussion? No discussion. Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll rise in opposition of this amendment. Whatever lipstick is on this pig will be washed away if this amendment passes. We will go back in time many years as we politicize public health. I guess the question I have is why we're at this point. Have we had these egregious local boards of public health just run roughshod over the county commission throughout the state of West Virginia? You want people to tell me they describe a thing in Morgantown where during the pandemic, Pennsylvania shut down all liquor stores. People were flooding across the West Virginia border. And so the prosecuting attorney, the county commission, the city council, and the local board of public health got together. This decision was not made in a vacuum. This decision had a lot of input. And the public health folks looked at it from a public health standpoint. The law enforcement folks looked at it from a law enforcement standpoint. They were actually having fistfights in the parking lots up in Morgantown. And so this egregious rule that Mon County Health Department came up with was to say, we're not going to sell liquor to people that are not from West Virginia, because Pennsylvania had a higher R0, a higher incidence of COVID-19, and we didn't want them to come down and give the state of West Virginia people the virus. I think another case was when someone wanted a vape shop and tobacco shop to be considered essential workers. That ended up working itself out, I think, through the governor's task force. But we are here about to pass an amendment which makes the bill even worse, and we're going to relook at all public health in West Virginia. We are in the midst of a pandemic. Public health has suffered, largely because of this body by not funding public health. So you have this group of public health workers out there and public health boards that are doing yeoman's work. It's a calling for them. Certainly not big money, but they're out there working and trudging. A lot of these little health departments that used to have 10 people working in them now have 3. We're calling on them now to test, vaccinate, contact trace. Oh, and by the way, keep up with all your other jobs that you have. Making sure there's clean water, making sure wells and restaurants. raw sewage, all those things. This amendment flies in the face of that. Again, I think the whole bill is bad, frankly. And I think that we have an opportunity. I know that in my day as health chair that we studied public health. I know the majority leader has looked at a lot of public health input. I know the current health chairman has as well. We have an opportunity to get this right. But this doesn't get it right. This impacts indoor smoking regulations. We already have a high incidence of that, twice the nation. We have counties in West Virginia whose students are vaping above 50%. I think we ought to be applauding public health, and I urge defeat of this amendment.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Harrison.
Mr. President, inquiry. The chair, are we on the amendment stage at this point?
Yes, we are.
I'll speak against the bill at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise to reject the gentleman's amendment. The senator from Boone, I think, has already explained my sentiment very clearly. I think what we've tried to do in this bill is create some accountability, but what the gentleman's amendment that's being offered right now, I think, goes way beyond that. It tries to take one of the unhealthiest states in the country with very limited resources in public health and walks it back decades. Most of the grassroots that have at least got us to the points where we are a healthier state, where we do some things right, where we have strong immunization policies, we're starting to get more and more smoke-free bans. We're also one of the highest states right now still with lung cancer rates. You're going to walk all that back for 3-4 decades with this amendment. You're going to put undue burden and process on those local boards of health that are already struggling, and I think it severely weakens the intent of what we were trying to do with this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Randolph to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. The senator from Boone made a statement where he said what this is going to do is politicize public health. And everything that the public has input on, everything we get a chance to vote on as members of the public, not members of this body, is by fact a politicization of that issue. Whether it's somebody running for office, which is very political, obviously, whether we put an amendment on the ballot, that's very political, obviously. Everything we do, from food safety to health to education to industrial standards, across the board, everything is politicized. That's what's real, because that's actually within the definition of what political means. So what he's really saying with that statement is we should take this away from the people. We should not allow the people to have a say in public health policy whenever we say we're not going to allow it to be politicized. Because if the people have a say, it is politicized. The purpose of this bill is to politicize, to some small degree, public health. Because it's saying, as an overall bill, future rules written by the health departments are going to be subject to review by people who are elected by the people. He's right in that this will politicize to some degree public health, just as we politicize every other significant issue that affects the people of this state. Everything is politicized, or we don't have a government and we don't have an elective body. We don't have a democracy. We have anarchy if it's not politicized. Of course it's politicized. But one of the foundational principles of this country and of this state is the principle that people who are affected by laws have the opportunity to vote for those laws in some way, either directly or indirectly through representatives. This amendment simply says that elected officials will, in fact, have an opportunity to review previous. Now, I've heard two people say this will set us back decades. This doesn't set anything back. It doesn't repeal any rule that's currently been adopted by any health board. It sets nothing back. What it does say is the county commissions or other approving authority will at least review those rules sometime in the next 10 years. They could wait 9.5 years to do it. They could do it on the very next meeting that they have. In that very next meeting that they have, much like we do with our rule-making review process, we roll rules up into a bundle. They could have a county commissioner propose a motion to accept all prior rules. And in that moment, vote on all prior rules, and all prior rules would then be approved. It would take 2 or 3 minutes at a county commission meeting, but at least we would know that the rules had been approved by an elected person who could be held accountable by the voters. It doesn't set anything back, though, so we should get away from that. What really is happening here, the opposition to this amendment, is really driven by the fact that there are rules that have already been promulgated, rules that apparently caused fistfights, according to the senator from Boone. Very contentious rules, rules that people were never given an opportunity to vote on because they were created by people who I have heard repeatedly are very difficult to even find to sit on these boards. And contained within that statement means that the people sitting on these boards, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're the county commission that would have appointed someone, but sometimes they're the 6th choice. Sometimes they're the 10th choice. Sometimes they're probably the people who are least likely to actually have any idea what's going on because they're the 10th choice to sit on that board. They were the only person that the county commission could find. So we have rules that have the effect of law that are being created by people that were not elected and weren't even the 1st or the 5th or the 8th choice of the county commission. And all this amendment does is say that the rules that those folks created 5 years ago and 10 years ago do eventually have to be approved by the county commission over the next 10 years. They stay in effect until they're approved or disapproved. Nothing gets rolled back, but eventually someone who was voted on by the people will have a chance to look at those rules. If we don't do that, if we don't adopt this amendment, what we're really doing is we're dictating, even though we're trying to return some local control, we're dictating that those old rules that some people like in this body are not subject to review by elected officials. All my amendment does is say that those rules too do have an opportunity to be reviewed. If we're going to allow people the opportunity to participate in self-government, this rule is essential because without it, they're being dictated to, not allowed to express their own views and their own proclivities as it relates to this particular issue. I urge adoption.
Question before the Senate is the adoption of the amendment offered by the senator from Randolph. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. I declare the amendment rejected. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed, and the clerk will read the bill a 3rd time.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 12 relating to local health department accountability. 3rd reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 12 creates a definition of appointing authority that includes the county commission or municipality or a combination thereof that authorize the creation of the local board of health. The bill also requires a member of the appointing authority to serve as a non-voting member ex officio on the local board of health. That member will not be counted against any criteria for the board appointing for the other board members. The bill permits the appointing authority to remove a local board health member for cause. With respect to a combined board, a county commissioner or appointing authority may remove its own appointed members. This bill also revises how rules are adopted, promulgated, or amended by local boards of health. It requires that the local board of health place a notice in the state register and on the organization's webpage setting forth the text of the rule and the date, time, and place for receipt of public comments. The bill sets forth a time frame, which is 30 days, for the rule to be presented for a review. The bill sets forth a time frame of 45 days for the county commission or appointing authority to approve or disapprove the rule. The bill contains 2 exceptions to the rulemaking provision. The first exception states that a rule currently in effect is not subject to approval or disapproval unless amended by the local health department from the county commission or appointing authority. The second exception is that there's a provision for an imminent public health emergency that permits the rule to go into effect immediately, but that rule shall be approved or disapproved by the county commission or appointing authority within 30 days after that rule does go into effect. Lastly, Mr. President, this bill states that if the governor declares a statewide public health emergency, the governor may direct the state health officer to develop emergency policies and guidelines that each of the local health departments responding to the emergency must comply with. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield? Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Senator. Senator, I just had a couple quick questions. I hadn't seen this bill until it got on the floor. What does the last section of this bill mean, Section D on page 12?
Let me get
It's at the very bottom of the bill.
Let me get the bill and make sure I'm referring to what section you're talking about.
Does it mean they have to comply with the governor's emergency policies and guidelines?
It does. What it means is if the governor declares a statewide 55-county emergency declaration of emergency, that the state health officer.
Do you think that makes sense? The last line of that is that each of the local health departments responding to the emergency must comply within response to the public health emergency. I mean, I just don't think that makes really very much sense.
Maybe the wording's different, is a little bit bizarre, but what the meaning is, yes, that if there's a statewide declaration by the governor that we want all 55 or all 48 local boards, every county to be on the same page and doing the same things as set forth by the state's public health officer.
But you see how it's redundant.
Yeah, I granted that.
And am I to understand that the purpose of this bill,
Right.
and we can take that up later, I just wanted to point out that provision makes absolutely no sense to me, and I'm sure it won't to a court if they have to interpret it, but we understand each other on that, right? I just wanted to make sure you saw that.
Yeah, no, that was I think that was added at the request of a stakeholder, and I think the intent might have been to make it clear that the central control from the state public health officer, exercising their power over these local boards is confined to that state of emergency.
Yeah, I understand the intent. I don't think that's what it says, is my point.
We'll clean that. Maybe that'll get cleaned up before it comes back to us.
Maybe we get the House to fix it. I don't know. The other issue I just wanted to raise, just to understand, the purpose of this bill is to give the elected body, county commissioners, I think is what is most raised in this bill, essentially veto authority over the decisions of whatever the appointed health board is.
That's close.
Okay, and I just want to be clear, because as a former county commissioner, I want to make sure that you want to give me the power to override your decision as a physician.
Well, I personally don't have a problem with that. I think that, first of all, the appointing authority, which is most often the county commission, has a seat on the board. So they're a part of the conversation, okay? They're going to propose a rule, an ordinance, and then that needs to be voted upon by them. And as opposed to the non-elected official proposing a rule or an ordinance, and it just becomes law without any input from the public or appointed or voted in public officials.
I mean, do you know who usually sits on those boards? Because I've sat on them. And it's usually a physician or two, a nurse, sanitarian, that kind of thing. I was low man on the totem pole on those boards with the least amount of knowledge. But it's going to come back to me and 2 other county commissioners to make the final decision on any rule of that expert board.
Well, you know, I wish I didn't have to vote on this bill, but I do. I mean, so but I was voted in. I mean, I think that's what they have to do. They were voted in. They ran for office. I don't have a problem with having a little bit of responsibility.
Well, and I appreciate that, Senator, but do you think that my opinion, because I'm elected to county commission, it should supersede a group of experts who are making health decisions for that county?
Well, you have a voice on the board to begin with. One of the members of the appointing authority is sitting there. Even though they're a non-voting member, they get to exercise their voice on that board. But yeah, I think if there is if the rule that the board is proposing is not up for disapproval, approval, ratification, whatever you want to call it, by the appointing authority, which is most often the county commission, then we run into these situations of at times these egregious, unbridled, encroachments upon businesses and people's rights, and that's happened. This bill didn't just spontaneously combust. This bill came about because there was a bunch of issues such as that was brought to the legislature's attention, and so yeah, I think I see the need.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. President, may I continue in opposition to the bill? Mr. President, I stand with the senator from Boone in opposition to this bill. I've been on the county commission, and I know a few others have in here, and I will tell you that we are simply taking public health out of the hands of experts and giving it to people like me, county commissioners. And the pressure is tremendous. It's not a little bit of pressure on county commissions. The pressure is tremendous to do what the loud few want to do, whether it's to allow smoking in restaurants or any other numerous health issues. The pressure falls upon the elected officials not to make the best decision for the public health of the county, but to make the best decision for their political future. And that's what this bill does. We're going to put public health decisions in the hands of people whose only concern, or whose primary concern in many cases, is their political future. Haven't we seen what's happened when we put public health in the hands of people with political futures? We have 500,000 dead in this country because of a haphazard patchwork of methods of addressing the pandemic, because every state had its own method. Every state had its own politician in charge. Every state had its own political futures at risk. Instead of having one cohesive policy that allowed us to control the pandemic. Haven't we learned our lesson? Rather than turn over the public health of every county in this state to the hands of politicians. I'd like to think that I'd make the right decision. But the smoking ordinance was the big deal when I was county commissioner. This body advocated its authority to state a statewide plan, and we passed it off down to the counties. And the counties at least did the smart thing. Instead of making a political decision, they handed it to the health departments, whose boards they appoint, whose boards they can change if the decision is that adverse to the economies or the health of the public. It's a bad bill. This bill has no reason to come about. other than a few people, will yell and scream that elected officials ought to be making the decisions that experts are making. I urge no vote on the bill, Mr. President. Thank you.
Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in opposition to this bill. Again, over the many years, even back in the 1800s, the leaders understood that there needed to be a bit of separation from politics and public health. Accountability is very important, there's no question, in government and society. Again, I placed on your desk some editorials in the past week or so. And we value the council members and county commissioners and leadership. Input is received. You think of, why would you want the final authority on it any more than you would want your insurance company or legislator directing your family's medical care? So there is a way that we can replace Board of Health members. It's established. We heard during the Health Committee meeting from county commissioners, and I'll bet you all have heard from county commissioners. They don't want this bill. They don't want to sign off on these public health bills or rules. In fact, one of them said, and I think it was from down in Greenbrier County, that they're concerned about an unwarranted exposure on counties that would create potential liability. Public health doesn't want this bill. They've been out here working so hard, again with a hand tied behind their back due to funding and lack of resources and lack of manpower. And what this bill does to them, and I hope you've heard from them, they've certainly contacted me, it basically pokes an eye, pokes a finger in their eye, right during this pandemic. The majority leader and the health chair and I have spoken many times of late, and again to reiterate, we need to look at public health. We need to look at what our resources are, what our geography is, and look at the response to the pandemic and come up with, based on some other studies that we've had, listen to the public health people, and whatever we decide after we look at what we did right in this pandemic, what we could have done better, what we did wrong, and we could come up with this. We could come up with a, and again, we haven't used the interim process lately, but this is certainly that high-level issue that needs to be studied. And again, not just to study it, but to study it to fix it, to put some accountability in there if we need some accountability. But again, in the 80s, the West Virginia founders, structuring our public health system, thought through this. They made county commissions and city councils responsible for appointing the Board of Health members, so policy could be grounded in scientific principle, expert guidance, and public input. They gave those boards, not county commissions or city councils, the authority to establish health ordinances for the common good. The American Heart Association, the American Lung Association, they're very concerned about undoing what clean indoor air regulations that we do have. Our demographics, our health statistics, absolutely do not call for any lessening of smoking regulations. Certainly, the pandemic, the people that were more apt to die were the people that had terrible lung disease. Kids are vaping at 57% in some counties. Public health workers are working so hard. We stick a finger in their eye. What if they decide to say, hey, I'm one of 3 people in this county? One of 3 people. And you know what? I'm at retirement age. I'm done. Guess what we do? We try to go in there, then hire someone. You know what the starting salary for a public health nurse is in West Virginia? $31,000, right at the minimum wage. We can't hire somebody. The people that have a calling, now the counties can pay them more. I look at my once proud Boone County that used to ship $80, $90 million a year to this body to appropriate in the form of coal severance tax. The county's budget has gone from about $21 million to just over $4 million. I don't think Boone County can pay any extra stipend for a public health nurse who's tired of being poked in the eye. This is a bad bill. It's an anti-public health bill. The Osteopathic Medical Association's against it. I urge defeat of this bill, and let's come together as a body like we did with the telemedicine bill and make something right, something we can be proud of, not something that, frankly, I'd be ashamed of. Thank you.
Further discussion. Junior Senator from the 8th.
Mr. President, I rise in opposition to the bill. As has already been stated by the senators from Boone and Harrison, no one wants this bill. My county commission does not want this bill. I've spoken to the health departments of both my counties. They don't want this bill. The way the system works is fine. We talked about being accountable. County commissioners, like everyone in this body, is looking to the next election cycle. The folks appointed to the local health boards are looking for the public good, the long-term public health of their county and the people that they're responsible for. That's why there's insulation. That's why, in the grand wisdom of the people that came before us, they said, no, you know what? Public health is not a political issue. We should make the right decision based upon the science, not the politics, not the fever of the month, but the science. Dr. Sherry Young is in charge of the local health department here in Kanawha County, and she is doing a fabulous job. She's been recognized by just about every media outlet in the country. She can do that. She's done a good job because she has the ability to do so, because she decides as a healthcare provider what's best for the county when it comes to rolling out the vaccinations. She doesn't need Richard Lindsay looking over her shoulder, or Kent Carper, the county commissioner, looking over her shoulder and telling her, well, you can't do that. And I can't, for the life of me, figure out why we're in the midst of a pandemic and we're standing here debating a bill that would only handcuff our local health departments. What we should be talking about is how to support them, what resources we can put towards them. Everyone agrees they're underfunded, they're undermanned. Not just for the crisis that we're dealing with now, but the many healthcare issues we have in this state, whether it's COPD, congestive heart failure, diabetes, on down the list. That's what we should be talking about. So I urge a no vote on this bill. I ask that you all join me. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of Senate Bill 12. And I'd like to begin my remarks, if I may, by echoing what others who've spoken before me have already acknowledged about our health departments and what they've done and been called upon to do over the course of the last year in the midst of this pandemic. It is nothing less than heroic. And Mr. President, you know as well as I, in the Eastern Panhandle, Berkeley, and Morgan counties, we have a combined health department. And the local health boards, the staff there have been working incredible hours started with COVID testing, but now getting vaccines into people's arms long into the night. I've heard stories of health officers in our Eastern Panhandle meeting people late at night to administer vaccines, emergency services workers who couldn't make it at the appointed time. It really and truly is heroic what they've done. And I doubt that it's any different in any other Senate district in this state, Mr. President. It's probably every county of this state. And so my support of this bill has nothing to do and does not diminish in any degree the admiration and esteem with which I hold all of our health boards, our health officials, their staffs. I hold them in very high regard and admire them greatly because we've seen real heroism in what they've done. This bill addresses a very small component of what health departments are asked to do or empowered to do under the law. And the reason I support this bill is because it's a structure of government bill. It's a good government bill, Mr. President. I want to start with, if I may, pick up a little bit on the eloquent remarks of the senator from Randolph. Government belongs to the people. We are their servants, we are their instruments, so are health departments, so are county commissions, so is the Congress, so is the president. The government ultimately, the sovereign power in this country is the people. And the people elect representatives to send to state and federal government, legislative bodies, executive branch positions to make decisions for them in this representative democracy in this great republic. I think one of the big problems that we have in this country, writ large right now, is the enormous growth and power of the administrative state. And it's particularly true at the federal level. Enormous power has been handed off to unelected representatives of the executive branch, largely, various departments, boards, and agencies, and they wield enormous power. And they are not accountable by election to the citizens. The proof that at the federal level it is out of control is that not nary a week goes by. There's not a week that goes by when you can avoid hearing a member of Congress, the House of Representatives or the United States Senate, decrying and complaining about some outrageous action taken by the federal administrative bureaucracy. You can hear members of Congress say, I never would have contemplated that they would impose such a rule on the people. And it doesn't matter, pick the agency, pick the board, pick the commission. It's transportation, it's health, it's education. And they're not checked. They're not checked in any way. Now, in West Virginia, we have a process that, in my view at least, at the state level, is superior. And we require that before rules from administrative agencies, various departments of the executive branch become effective and govern the lives of people, they go through a process here and ultimately have to be voted on and passed by both houses of the legislature. And that's the way it should be, Mr. President. The people who are elected by the citizens should have the final say and should be responsible to the citizens for what the agencies, bureaus, commissions, boards that the government creates for what they impose upon the people. If not, then the people cannot be truly sovereign, and they should be sovereign. Now, everyone here is familiar with our rulemaking process, and as said, this bill, what I like about Senate Bill 12, is that would, in small degree, replicate that process at the county level. And I will tell you, Mr. President, it's not brand new what we're talking about here. It already exists at the county level in many areas. For instance, county commissions have the authority to appoint a planning commission, a zoning board, but the county commission decides what the subdivision ordinance will be, what the zoning ordinance will be. Those are not turned over. If you look in Chapter 8 of our code and follow that process for creation of a subdivision ordinance or a zoning ordinance, ultimately the county commission has the final say on those questions. It's true, county commission has the authority to create a fire board, but the law does not allow the fire board to establish the ordinance or set the fees that will be assessed on the citizens. That's done by the county commission. This would put the process with respect to health in line with those other processes that already exist under the law now. Now, we have, I know, on boards of health in all 55 counties, some municipalities, dedicated people who are dedicated to the public health. But here's why I suggest, Mr. President, that it's important that ultimate decisions on what the rules will be, the ordinances or the law in a county will be, should be made by those elected officials. In the bill that allows counties to appoint boards of health, this is current law, this is not new law. It gives the Board of Health the authority to adopt and promulgate from time to time, amend rules that are necessary and proper for the protection of the general health of the service area. And that's a noble goal. It is absolutely right. Public health is important. It is important. I don't mean to suggest otherwise. And it's important enough to have a board that has as its charge and mission the suggestion, recommendation for rules that people will be governed by that will promote proper protection of the general health of the service area. But we give boards of health a mission. It's a narrow mission. It's a critically important mission. Public health, it is critically important, but the Board of Health has that as its only mission. And I would suggest, Mr. President, that there are occasions when there are other considerations. Well, those other considerations are not within the mission of Board of Health. There are considerations about the economic consequences of decisions that get made, rules that get passed, ordinances that get adopted. There are liberty considerations, individual liberty. That's not within their mission, Mr. President. Their mission is public health. And the balancing, while I like this bill, the reason I like this bill is I think it forces balance. And while public health is critically important, and we all agree, we have to have regulations to protect, promote public health, but they have to be balanced always. They have to be balanced against other considerations, fundamental personal freedom, economic consequences. And I'm not going to suggest that members of boards of health give no regard to those questions, but it's not their mission. It's not what the law charges them with considering. It's not within the duty we give them to consider those things. You know, we hear members of Congress or decry some outrageous regulation that's been imposed by the EPA on the citizens, waters of the United States. The EPA has a mission, and their mission is protect the environment. And I think it's unrealistic if you give them that mission, to expect that they can be fully responsible for balancing everything else. They're working within the mission we give them. And so it is with boards of health. And, you know, quite frankly, I don't know that it's happened in West Virginia yet, but I bet you if one of the people who are worried about this bill, if I were to ask the question, they would say, yeah, Charlie, drinking those 32-ounce big gulps is not good for you. It's not good for me. Do we give the departments of health the unfettered authority to pass an ordinance that say nobody can have a big gulp drink? Now, it hasn't happened here in West Virginia, but it has happened in other places, Mr. President. And is it unreasonable? Maybe not. The Board of Health has as its mission public health. Probably I shouldn't drink a 32-ounce big gulp full of sugar. But there are liberty interests. There are liberty interests that we don't ask the Board of Health to consider or take into account when it writes an ordinance to promote public health. And I think that is the beauty of this bill. It puts final decisions. The health department does what it does. I agree with the senator from Boone. You know, it's very hard. I've talked to Bill Carnes and others in our Eastern Panhandle. They're having a terrible time getting nurses and keeping them because of the pay, and nurses being in such high demand, and as we all know, our proximity to the borders of other states. But when the Board of Health functions as a legislature for a county or a municipality, these are the rules that you will be bound by. I don't think it's too much to say the final decision on that must be made by someone who is accountable by election to the citizens of the county, citizens of the municipality. That, Mr. President, in my opinion, is good government. And it's consistent with the way many other rulemaking processes, ordinance processes that arise at the county level. I mentioned planning and zoning and some others. It's consistent with the way those operate and work. I think this bill is balanced, and I think it brings balance. And it doesn't provide, let's be clear about this, it doesn't provide for the county commission or a city council to micromanage the day-to-day operations of a health department or the manner in which they deliver the rest of their mission. What it does do, which I think is important in a free society, it brings the voice of the people to the consideration and construction of the rules and ordinances under which they must live. I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know we've had a lot of debate about this today, and probably ready to move on from debate, Mr. President. I understand that. But I think it's important to say one thing that hasn't been said yet here today. This bill's been characterized in a lot of ways. Is this a federal issue? Is this a state issue? Is this a local issue? You may even just be tuning in to the debate and you may think, oh, this is a partisan issue. This looks like a Democrat-Republican thing. I would submit to you, Mr. President, this is not a partisan issue. I'd like to use my time and my remarks in giving them to Greg Puckett, who testified about this bill before the Senate Health Committee. Greg is a Republican county commissioner in Mercer County. He's a board member for the National Association of Counties. He's the chair of the Rural Action Caucus. He's the vice chair of the Healthy Counties Initiatives, chair of the Mental Health Subcommittee, and last year he was awarded the nation's top honor as the Louis Gorin Award for Outstanding Achievements in Rural Health Care by the National Rural Health Association. And these are just a few of his comments about SB 12 from the Health Committee last week. Quote, "I'm increasingly perplexed at why the legislature, during a time when we should be focused more on protections of our public, would consider bills that would inevitably roll back health and safety measures locally. County commissions and city councils already appoint individuals to the boards of health. These boards exist to depoliticize public health. SB 12 would threaten the ability of local boards of health to respond quickly to their community's public health needs and threats. In fact, it would undermine the very purpose for the creation and establishment of our local boards of health nearly a century ago. Now is not the time to take a step backward in improving public health efforts in this state. Public health is not a partisan issue, and when politics are prioritized, people are put at risk." End quote. I would just add one brief thing, Mr. President. For the very first time in decades, we have given our local health departments some of the resources that they so desperately need during the pandemic over the past year, specifically to do COVID vaccination clinics. And they have put together processes across the state that make Chick-fil-A blush. They have done tremendously good work. Why would we take away any of their authority? I agree with the senator from Oregon that they have been nothing less than heroic. Mr. President, SB 12 is no way to treat heroes. I urge rejection. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Marshall, wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I've never taught a high school class or driven a school bus. Unlike my predecessor at this very seat, I've never bought a coal mine. Or unlike the senator to my right that's usually there, I've never dug coal. But we all have our areas of interest. We all have our areas of expertise. We have certain portions of the laws and government that are more important to our own personal beliefs. We all, as legislators, ran for election. We have to make decisions in all of these areas that span the entire spectrum, from the things we know a little bit about to the things we know a lot about. And then we're held accountable for those decisions. That's what this bill attempts to do. The bill arose because there were problems, there were issues. People's rights, businesses' rights were being infringed upon, and they spoke out, and that's where this bill came from. This bill attempts to fix that. It's not a new concept. We pass bills all the time. They become law, and it gives departments within state government rulemaking authority. They make rules. Some of those are public health rules. But what happens to they're non-elected officials? What happens to the rules? They have to be ratified. We have to vote on them. That's the same process that we're instituting here at the local level. It's a very contentious bill, I get that. And I understand and hear loudly the points made by some of the senators that spoke against the bill, some of the funding points especially. I also agree that the heroic measures by many of these boards during this crisis with their staffing and their funding levels just deserves an immense applause by all of us. And we need to relook at the funding for these boards. But what we have before us now is Senate Bill 12, and I would urge passage of this bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 21 yeas, 13 nays, 0 absent and not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk has the title amendment.
Senator Maroney moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question is on adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 61, expanding coyote control program through voluntary assessment on breeding cows. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Preston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 61 modifies West Virginia Code 7, Chapter 7, Article 7, Section 6E, currently which provides for the mandatory assessment of $1 on all breeding age sheep and goats. The assessor collecting the assessment is entitled to a 10% commission, and all monies collected incident to those assessments, the remaining 90% of the collected assessment, shall be sent to the Commissioner of Agriculture, who is required to deposit the same in a special account in the state treasury known as the Integrated Predation Management Fund. The money in the fund is used by the Commissioner of Agriculture solely to enter into a cooperative service agreement with the U.S. Department of Agriculture Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service and the Wildlife Services to expand the coyote control program statewide. This bill provides that cows of breeding age may be included within the coyote control program. However, their inclusion is not mandatory. If owners of breeding age cows decline to pay the assessment, they are not eligible to participate in the coyote control program. If, however, a breeding age cow owner does elect to participate in the coyote control program, he or she may not place any control method upon the land until such time as he or she provides written notice of his or her participation in the program to first any landowner from whom the cow owner leases pasture land, which may be affected by the cow owner's participation in the program, and 2, any landowner of property adjacent to the property upon which the coyote control program will be implemented. This bill passed the Senate last year unanimously but died in the House. Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting have voted into the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 244, making it unlawful for public utility to prohibit customers from hiring contractors to construct, install, or maintain connections to public utility. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Wetzel.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill requires public service districts and municipalities that both own and operate a water or sewer utility to allow a customer or contractor of a customer at the customer's expense to construct, install, or maintain connections, extensions, or other infrastructure necessary for the customer to connect to the public utility, if all requirements listed in the bill are met. The requirements are listed in the bill which you have before you. In summary, the Public Service Commission's legislative rules on water and sewer still apply. The PSC would have authority to step in and set aside standards or contractor qualifications requirements set by a utility that are unreasonable or discriminatory. The PSC would also be allowed to impose any specific requirement or standard that may be necessary to protect the public interest. And one of the most things I add in here, one of the primary things is protection of the assets of the public utilities. Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Who? Senator from Logan? There we go. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On the question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 7, limiting political activity by public employees. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Trump moved to amend the bill on page 2, section 2, line 8, by striking out the words "the governor" and inserting in lieu thereof the words "publicly elected members of the Board of Public Works."
Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge adoption of the amendment.
Senator from Morgan requests unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The section 2 of the committee substitute listed the governor alone, and the amendment, as the clerk read, will make it clear that it applies to all the elected members of the Board of Public Works. So that would be governor, but also attorney general, auditor, treasurer, ag commissioner, and who am I forgetting? Auditor? Yeah. Urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there discussion? Senator from Harrison.
Thank you. Will the senator from Morgan yield?
Senator yields.
Senator, thank you for yielding. I'm just curious, why are we exempting anybody from this bill? Well, the bill as it's before us exempts, if this amendment is adopted, it will be the Board of Public Works. The legislature is exempted. The legislative employees of the legislature are exempted. The members, officers of the judiciary exempted, and employees of the judicial branch are exempted, as are uncompensated public officials and uncompensated public servant volunteers. So your question is why? Judicial officers and their employees are governed by canons of ethics. And so this bill places sections of code in the Governmental Ethics Act. And the Ethics Commission has no authority to regulate the judicial officers or their employees. That they're subject to discipline under the judicial canons in the judicial branch. So that's a reason for their exemption. Members of the legislature and employees of the legislative branch are exempt because, much as I hate to hear it, I feel as if it is the right of my friend from Harrison or any senator to get up and say anytime he wants and anywhere he wants, Republicans are a bunch of knuckleheads, you should vote Democratic, and vice versa. I thought we agreed there for a second, but go ahead, you added in the second part. The vice versa is part of it as well. No, but I think for a legislator, it's hard, when are you on duty? So what we're trying to get to in this bill, it's very narrow the way we have it on the floor now. So it's public employees while not engaging in political activity while on duty or in their vehicle. Let me get the exact language. And let me say, I understand, just to focus you a little bit on really the crux of my question, I understand elected officials, because, you know, whether we like it or not, I guess we're always running. It's the employees of the legislative branch. It's the employees of the governor. It's the employees of the other boards of public works that we're adding now. I mean, if our goal is to, and I think our goal is to protect those people from being forced by an elected official. Let me interrupt you if I may. Absolutely. The bill does not exempt, even with the amendment, employees of the governor or employees of the Board of Public Works if the amendment's adopted. Just those specific people, under the theory that our state treasurer, whoever he or she may be, is arguably on duty 24/7 everywhere. So we're not restricting that person, but the exemption would not apply to any employees of those people, or the governor, or any other board or bureau of the executive branch of the government. Then I guess the question goes, why are we exempting legislative employees and uncompensated public officials, uncompensated public servants? I mean, it's still, I'm just trying to understand the philosophy behind the whole thing. Well, I can tell you my thinking, and I won't attribute it to anybody else because people may not agree with me. But as we started with the introduced bill, it seemed to me to be too broad. It applied to ballot issues. We took that out. It applied, you know, we exempted volunteers because, for instance, this is a hypothetical that was discussed. In my county, we have two, this will be a commercial for them, two beautiful, perfect state parks, Kicapin State Park and Berkeley Springs State Park. And Kicapin State Park has an active foundation, volunteers, and it has, just so all the members of the Senate know and all the viewers that we may have, spectacular hiking trails. And in April, it's usually April, in the spring every year, the foundation has a trail day, and they get volunteers. Volunteers from the county and around come in with their chainsaws and trucks and other tools and equipment, and they go up and down that mountainside and cut up trees that have fallen or limbs that have fallen into the trails. So if one of those guys has a MAGA hat on or a Hillary Clinton button on, they would fall under it if we didn't exempt them. That's why they're exempt. Volunteers are exempt. And I should take them one at a time. And let's just try legislative staff, because, again, again, if the idea is to protect state employees, and I want to go back to the judicial branch and their employees, but legislative employees, I wouldn't want to be in a position to pressure a legislative staff member to go out and campaign for me. And I don't understand that exemption. And although the judicial officers are covered by the canons, I don't think their employees are. They're state employees, but let's take them one at a time. Let's try the legislative staff. I don't understand why they're exempted. That was in there, I think, you know, I don't know if there's any particular reason to put them in. I'll just say this. It's in the bill. This is not part of the amendment. It's in the bill as it came out from committee. You're absolutely right. And if I'm speaking outside of the amendment, I'll be glad to take it up separately, but it goes to the amendment in that, you know, we're talking about exemptions. That's why I asked the question. I guess for me, same argument. If one of the minority staff, you know, in the heat of conversations around this building while on duty said, I don't know why anybody would ever vote for you Republicans. Or one of our staff on the majority side said, I don't know why anybody would ever vote for a Democrat. I never would. They're on duty. They're here. I didn't, you know, I don't want to. And in the same sense, there's nothing to stop me from having the minority staff go out and put up signs for me during an election, they would be exempt from this. I mean, they could, I could have them do that. Would they still, could they be, if they wanted to, let's say they voluntarily did it, but they could do that on state time and be exempted from this statute? Bear with me.
So council's advising me that this, while it's new language to the Ethics Act, and there may already be prohibitions in the Ethics Act that prohibit that. And
but we're not positive. We're not sure. I mean, they may. I mean, certainly they're exempted from this direct prohibition. From this. They're exempted from this bill.
They're exempted from this bill, but remember, this bill says, there's language in here that says, in addition to, if you look at section 3, it begins with, in addition to any other restrictions on political activity imposed by this code or by federal law, a public employee or official or public official may not.
And Mr. Senator, just to understand, are you telling me there are prohibitions on legislative staff and all state employees from participating in elections or in, as it says here, political activities that are somewhere else in the code? Because I don't remember. I thought it was a common law prohibition. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't know if there was another prohibition.
Your question is a great one, and it requires an answer with real clarity. Mr. President, if I may, I ask that this bill lie over one day, retaining its place on the calendar, with amendments pending.
With the right to amend?
Right to amend.
Thank you, Senator.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. To delay it over for one day.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 42, creating Zombie Property Remediation Act of 2021.
Are there amendments? Excuse me. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill lie over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Senate Bill 67, relating to the authority of Emergency Medical Services Advisory Council. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 79, providing fair mechanism for adjudication of requests for relocation of parent with child. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 89, exempting certain kindergarten and preschool programs offered by private schools from registration requirements. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 182, authorizing miscellaneous agencies and boards to promulgate legislative rules. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 270, providing for collection of tax by hotel marketplace facilitators. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 275, relating generally to West Virginia Appellate Reorganization Act of 2021.
Are there
Second
amendments
reading of
to
the bill? Yes, sir. Senator Tarr moved to amend the bill on pages 33 through 37 by striking out all of Section 11A.
Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendments in lieu of having them read, and that all the amendments be considered as one.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from the 4th.
Mr. President, these amendments are primarily technical in nature to further clarify the action of the Finance Committee in adopting the committee substitute for the committee substitute as it relates to the initial appointments of judges and staggering their initial terms. It came to my attention that the language in the bill as it was there, it was not actually written as it was explained by counsel and the committee, so this brings it back to exactly as it was explained by counsel in our committee. I urge adoption.
Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment offered by the senior senator from the 4th. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Hamilton moved to amend the bill on page 63 after line 6.
Senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The senator requests unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Thank you. My amendment deals with post-judgment, and I'll read on the second part of the amendment here, just to give a preface. The rate of post-judgment interest on judgments and decrees for the payment of money is 2 percentage points above the 5th Federal Reserve District secondary discount rate in effect on January 2nd of each year, in which the judgment or decree is entered, provided that the rate of post-judgment of interest may not exceed 9% per annum or be less than 4% per annum. The Administrative Office of the Supreme Court of Appeals shall annually determine the post-judgment interest rate to be paid upon judgments or decrees for the payment of money, and shall take appropriate measures to promptly notify the courts and members of the West Virginia State Bar and the rate of interest in effect on the calendar year in question. What my amendment does, it's just the post-judgment interest on judgments and decrees for the payment of money is 2 times the rate which would otherwise apply under subsection C, which I just read, for any period of time that the judgment or decree is pending on appeal before the West Virginia Intermediate Court of Appeals and the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals. In favor of this, and I ask the body to please vote yes.
Is there discussion? Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator from, Upshur
yield? Senator yields.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator. So I just want to make sure I understand the amendment as you've explained it. So the way that I hear the amendment is that presently the Supreme Court sets across the state for circuit court and any other situation that they can put in a percentage interest on the expenses that a plaintiff may have should there be a ruling in front of for the plaintiff. That rate, the Supreme Court will set that right now somewhere between 4 and 9%. Your amendment would allow that to go up to 18%?
That's correct. It could be.
Okay, so, all right, that's, I'll speak to the amendment if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I respectfully oppose the gentleman's amendment. What presently happens, as the way I understand it, is that the Supreme Court sets across the stage for all courts, circuit court and through the appellate process, a way for a plaintiff, should the judgment go in their favor, to retain interest on the monies that they expended for that. An amendment for just the appellate process to jump that up and for specific situations up to 18% is terribly pushing the scale of justice toward the plaintiff's side, to push them to settle a claim and settle it quickly, because 18% interest is just exorbitant. And what typically happens with lawsuits that may come before this appellate, being a small business owner and seeing how these things can be handled, is that it's the easiest way to get to a settlement is to have the person that you're suing realize that it's going to cost them more to fight and win than it would be just to pay out a claim. And so especially when the insurance is involved, you have an insurer because there's something called a hammer clause. And that hammer clause says that if I buy insurance, that I'm giving the insurer the right to tell me when I have to settle or when we'll fight. Because otherwise, if I say, look, I'm going to fight this, I know I can win it, regardless of what it costs, they're going to say, fine, you get to pay everything it costs, instead of actually acting as the insurer. So this has terrible consequences with regards to people having to settle rather than fight when they're on the right side. So I respectfully oppose the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in favor of the gentleman's amendment, and let me explain why. You know, we're creating a new layer of government here. And what does government do? We know it all in here. We say it all the time. It creates delay. And you're talking about people that have medical bills, lost wages, and so many other economic losses that are going to be hanging in the balance of this delay. And it's going to be an extensive delay. Don't kid yourself. It's going to be an extensive delay because the goal of this bill is to create delay to discourage people from bringing good civil actions where they're legitimate, and they're to benefit insurance companies who make money holding on to their money. Now, 18% sounds like a lot, except this body last year passed a bill raising the maximum interest rate in this state on consumers to over 30%. And we don't want to make somebody pay 18% who's taken advantage of a layer of government to delay justice for people who have already been through a trial, who have already had a verdict by a jury of their peers, and we're worried about 18% to discourage frivolous appeals, which is going to be the result of this bill. Because every case on the defense side is going to get appealed because they make money holding on to our money. Sure, a $25,000 case, you say that's not going to make any difference to an insurance company, except they got 10,000 of those cases pending. Do the math. They're making 18% return on their money in the last few years. Sure, one year it went down to a terrible 7%. I'd like to make 7%. But there's no incentive to pay just cases when you can delay it without any penalty, and believe me, 18% is not a big penalty. It's not a severe penalty, but it may make them think twice about bringing a frivolous appeal. I urge adoption of the gentleman's amendment.
Further remarks? Senator from Rochester, wish to close?
President.
Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry I wasn't quick enough on the draw. I'll be brief. I rise in opposition to the Senator's amendment. It's a little bit like deja vu all over again. The judgment interest statute was passed by this legislature in 2018. And it used to be just an arbitrary number, but we passed the law in 2018 and said exactly what the senator from Upshur said that it says. It ties it to an index, and it's in the statute. Post-judgment is tied to 2 percentage points above the 5th Federal Reserve District secondary discount rate in effect on January 2nd of each year when the judgment's entered. So just so everybody knows, Mr. President, interest accrues on a judgment from the moment it's rendered and entered. Once the court enters a judgment, interest accrues until it's paid. And 3 years ago, this legislature decided in the bill that it passed that interest rates were too high on judgments because they were way outside of market. So we have this law that says the Supreme Court every year, January, looks at the 5th Federal Reserve District secondary discount rate, whatever that is on January 2nd, adds 2 points to it, And that's the judgment rate, except that there's a floor and a cap. And so, for instance, this year, right now, the judgment rate that was set by the Supreme Court of Appeals for interest rates on judgments under that statute is 4%. I have a copy of the order entered by Chief Justice Evan Jenkins on January 4th of this year. And the fifth, just so members know, the fifth Federal Reserve District's secondary discount rate on January 2nd of this year was 0.75%, 0.75%. And that gets under our formula, 2% added to it, so it's 2.75%. But we have a floor and a ceiling, 4% to 9%. The calculated rate on judgments now is below our floor, so it gets raised to 4%. That's the rate. As was pointed out, if you double the rate, it'd be doubling 4 to 9, so basically it could be 8 to 18. But 4% is above market rates, Mr. President. If you had a little bit of money and you went to a bank and put it in a certificate of deposit now, I don't think you're going to get 2% anywhere. Anywhere. So if a debtor pays the judgment and the plaintiff has his money and is putting it in the bank, he's going to get 1.5%, 2% now, probably about the best CD rate you're going to see. But if he has to forbear the money while an appeal takes place, under the current law, it would be 4%. And then, as I understand the gentleman's senator's amendment, that would double to 8% right now. Could go as high as 18%. This legislature acted 3 years ago to bring the rates of interest that apply to judgments into line with market conditions. And that's what it should be, in my opinion. And I think that was the judgment of this legislature when we passed that bill 3 years ago. The gentleman's senator's amendment, if adopted, would have two different rates then. So you'd have, as I understand it, a high rate that applies only while the case is on appeal to the Intermediate Court of Appeals. And then once that is over, if the judgment is affirmed, then it would go back to the original rate in the statute that we enacted 3 years ago. So I think it'll cause confusion. And I just want to say one other thing in opposition to it. When we hear about these interest rates in these cases, we hear all the time from some members of this body, my good friend from Harrison County. Oh, the insurance company wants to delay it, they're going to drag it out. And, Mr. President, the rate of interest on judgments applies to all judgments. All judgments. So what that means is, it's not just the insurance company. If it's the power company that sues a widow because she owes $1,500, she's behind on her power bill, we're elevating that interest rate too. If it's a senior citizen in West Virginia that some creditor has sued and got a judgment against for $10,000, we're jacking that rate up too while it's on appeal. So it's not just the big guy against the little guy. It's the little guy against the big guy too. So the fair thing to do, in my opinion, is leave alone what we have in place, which sets the interest rate on judgments in a way that tries to be consistent with the real world market for the forbearance of money. And even that, Mr. President, even at that, it's elevated a little bit above what the current rates are. 4%, I've seen lots of residential mortgages at under 4% now. So I urge rejection of the senator's amendment.
Further discussion? Senator from Upshur to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I respectfully disagree with my two chairs. We're passing a bill that's going to add another layer of court in West Virginia. Now, you take the widow or the widower that has filed a suit, they become the plaintiffs, they win in circuit court. So what do now with this if this bill passes? They simply appeal it to the intermediate court if it qualifies. And then if they're unsuccessful there, they appeal to the Supreme Court. My amendment incentivizes everyone to not do that. Why would you want to take a risk of paying 14 or 18%, which I don't think is going to come anytime soon if you looked at your CDs lately. You know, they're less than 0.5%. And in closing, I'll just mention one case in the oil and gas industry, the Taney decision. Those people were twisted around for 6 to 8 years before a decision was ever made on that. One of the two had passed away. So I ask for you all to please consider and vote yay on this. Thank you.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment offered by the senator from Upshur. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. I declare the amendment rejected. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
What purpose, Senator from Harrison, wish?
Sir, I don't believe you heard me, Mr. President, but I announced roll call twice. I don't think you heard me.
I've already ruled on this. We didn't hear it. Next time, get it sooner. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Well, is he recognized?
Hmm? I made a ruling.
Right.
For what purpose does the senator want recognized?
I move to reconsider the previous decision and ask for a roll call.
Is there objection? Chair hears none.
Okay. The Senator.
A roll call has been demanded. One moment. The senator from Harrison has moved to reconsider the vote by which the amendment was adopted.
And the yeas and nays have been demanded.
The yeas and nays have been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. The question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine.
Okay, and it's on the motion to reconsider, not the amendment, but you're close.
Wait a minute.
One more to vote. One more to vote.
I know.
Is it?
Who's that? Weld is.
All right.
The clerk will close the machine.
On this question, 16 yeas.
On this question, 16 yeas, 17 nays, 0 absent, and 0 not voting. The motion has failed.
You have one absent.
Excuse me, 1 absent. The gentleman from Harrison's motion, I declare rejected.
Bill being engrossed and advanced to third reading.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 296, relating generally to repealing certain rules. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 372, providing greater discretion to West Virginia Board of Medicine to approve graduate clinical training. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Bills on first reading. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members. Miscellaneous business. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subject to announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Judiciary will meet this afternoon at 3:30 p.m. in the Judiciary Committee room in the West Wing.
Senator from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Education will meet today at 2:30 in room 451M. We will reconvene at 5 if necessary to complete the day's agenda.
Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Finance will meet today at 3:30 in 451M. We'll have budget hearings from the Supreme Court and the Lottery Commission. We'll also have consideration of bills.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Health will meet today at 1:30 in 451M.
Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Government Organization will be meeting today at 2:30 p.m. in room 208 West.
Senator from Raleigh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Workforce will meet tomorrow, Wednesday, at 10 a.m. in 208 West. The agenda will be posted this afternoon.
Senator from Preston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Agriculture will meet tomorrow, Wednesday at 2 p.m., 208 West.
Are there further announcements? Senator from Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Economic Development will meet tomorrow, 1 p.m., 208 West.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Pension Committee shall meet tomorrow, 2 p.m. in the Finance Committee room. The agenda will be posted.
Further announcements. If not, the question before the Senate is that the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow, 11 a.m. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate adjourned.
House will please be in order. All those persons not having privilege of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time, and members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by the gentleman of the 5th, Douglas Pethel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us this opportunity to assemble here once again. We just ask that everything that's said here would be in accordance with your will. We thank you for everything that you do for us, everything that we take for granted each day. Thank you for giving the members safe travel to and from home and back each time that we go home. Now watch over us, guide us, and in death save us. Amen.
Amen. Members and guests, please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning by the gentleman of the 4th, Douglas Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring our flag by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Monday, February 22nd, 2021.
Gentleman first, Douglas Teslo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
Gentleman first, Douglas Teslo, ask unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? There are no objections. Introduction of guests. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have two guests today. Michael Amos from Canova is serving as our Doctor of the Day, and Pastor Bo Burgess of Jordan Baptist Church is viewing from the Great Hall. Please make them welcome.
Reports of standing committees.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2529, prohibiting West Virginia institutions of higher education from discriminating against graduates of private, non-public, or home schools by requiring them to submit to alternative testing. Reports back a committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 2265, relating to collaborative pharmacy practice and updating rulemaking authority. Reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 2290, initiating a state employment first policy to facilitate integrated employment of disabled persons. Reports back to committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report to be received. Are there further reports of standing committees? If not, reports of select committees. Message from the executive. Message from the Senate.
The clerk of the Senate reports the Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 11, declaring work stoppage or a strike by public employees to be unlawful.
The message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration and dispense with the committee reference.
Are there objections to lady's request? There are no objections. Message will be received. Next report of standing committees. Message from the Senate.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 66, creating voluntary WVU rifle team checkoff program on hunting and fishing licenses.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 69, creating Choose Life special registration plates supporting adoption.
The message will be received. That bill will be referred to the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure, then the Committee on Government Organization.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 280, relating to e-commerce modernization.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 293, clarifying that Economic Development Authority is not authorized to enter into banking contracts without state treasurer approval.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 295, relating generally to economic development loans and loan insurance issued by the state.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance. Are there further Senate messages? If not, resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 7, a resolution to ensure that the Supreme Court is composed of 9 justices.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the delegate console system.
The lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the delegate console system. Are there objections? There are no objections. Petitions, motions, bills introduced.
House Bill 2638, granting full-time employees of county boards of education 3 months of paid leave following the birth of a child.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and that each bill be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the delegate console system.
The lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and that each bill be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the delegate console system. Are there objections? There are no objections. Unfinished business. Resolutions and bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 1, Education Accountability Amendment.
Are there objections to having the resolution read? Explain in lieu of having it read. The chair hears no objection. The gentleman in the 35th, Delegate Capito, is recognized to explain the resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, everybody. The committee substitute for HJR 1 deals with the Education Accountability Amendment. This is a constitutional amendment. For those of you that have been in terms before in this body, and as those of you who it's your first term will learn soon, we have the unique ability in West Virginia to do legislative rulemaking review and approve the rules that come through agencies. They come before this body and are approved by this body. The only agency currently in West Virginia that does not come under that is the Board of Education. The purpose of the constitutional amendment before you right now is to provide that the legislature would have oversight over the Boards of Education rulemaking. So we would review those rules just as we would any other rules that come before this body. That is a summarization of this amendment and what it would do if adopted by both houses and adopted by the people of West Virginia. I'm happy to take questions.
The question before the House is the adoption of the resolution. Are there members who wish to speak to adoption of the resolution? If not, the question before the House is the adoption of the resolution. This resolution does require a 2/3 vote for adoption. Those in favor of adoption will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 95 ayes, 2 nays, and 3 members absent not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the resolution adopted. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2260 relating to procurement of child placing services.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears no objection. The gentleman in the 28th, Delegate Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to clarify that the Department of Health and Human Resources contract with child placing agencies is exempt from the Division of Purchasing. This change removes the requirement that the Bureau of Children and Families do a request for proposal for a performance-based contract with child placing agencies. By requiring the department to do an RFP, the purchasing requirements state that the procurement has to be competitively bid. This would have limited the number of child placing agencies in certain regions of the state and could have caused foster parents and children to be shifted to new organizations. This change will enable the department to do a performance-based contract with all child placing agencies and ensure there is no disruption to foster families. The new contract will be complete by July 1, 2021. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent and not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2260 relating to procurement of child placing services.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2500, create an act for statewide uniformity for auxiliary container regulations.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? There are no objections. The gentleman in the 29th, Delegate Steele, to explain the bill.
House Bill 2500, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. House Bill 2500 would ban any county, municipality, or city from adopting or enforcing any regulation, restriction, prohibition, or imposing any fee, charge, or tax on auxiliary containers. An auxiliary container means a bag, cup, bottle, or other packaging, whether reusable or single use, that meets both of the following requirements: is made of cloth, paper, plastic, cardboard, corrugated material, aluminum, glass, post-consumer recycled material, or similar material or substrates, including coated, laminated, or multi-layer substrates, and is designed for transporting, consuming, or protecting merchandise, food, or beverages from or at a food service or retail facility. Mr. Speaker, that is a bill, and we urge adoption. Passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman to 37th, Doug Pushkin, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman, you're still standing.
It's hard for me to get back up and down. So.
I wanted to get to you before you sat back down. I didn't want to trouble you anymore, sir. So this, okay, if a municipality wanted to have a recycling program and wanted to pay for it this way, this would prohibit them from doing that, right?
No, it would not. There are exceptions to curbside residential and or commercial recycling programs, littering ordinances, and the use of auxiliary containers on property owned by a county, municipality, or a city. So it would not affect recycling programs.
Okay, well, that's the only thing I could really foresee this affecting, but it doesn't affect that. So give me an example of what we're trying to prohibit here.
It would be like when the city of San Francisco banned the use of plastic straws.
Okay, well, last time I checked, that's in California. Is this happening in West Virginia anywhere, in any municipality?
It's been discussed at several municipalities, but it hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened. Not happening anywhere. No. Okay, thank you. Mr. Speaker, briefly.
Gentleman is recognized.
This is another, solution in search of a problem. I don't know why we're doing this, but I don't know. I'm not going to vote for it.
Are there other members who wish to be recognized on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 79 ayes, 19 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2500, create an act for statewide uniformity for auxiliary container regulations.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2094 relating to the juvenile restorative justice programs.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2184 increasing the penalties for exposure of governmental representatives to fentanyl or any other harmful drug.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2372 allow pre-candidacy papers to be filed the day after the general election.
The bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you for our colleagues, Delegates Ellington and Bates.
Are there objections to leaves being granted? The chair hears no objection. Leaves of absence shall be granted. Introduction of guests. Miscellaneous business. If not, lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcement, that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Wednesday, February 24th.
The lady from the 49th moves that, subject to announcements, the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Are there announcements? The gentleman of the 17th, Doug Lovejoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a bittersweet announcement today that our own Robert Williams back here, it's his last day here in the House. He began working here in 1998, served 16 years as counsel for the Judiciary Committee, and these last 2 years he's been counsel for the minority. He's headed off to our Public Service Commission as the consumer advocate, and I'd like the House to thank him for his service and wish him well in his future career.
gentleman of the 10th, Delegate Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will have budget hearings this afternoon, February 23rd, in the House Chamber at 4 p.m. with the Department of Education and the School Building Authority. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman of the 32nd, Delegate Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Judiciary will meet today, 4 p.m., Government Organization Room. The amended agenda has been posted. Also, the Republican members of the Judiciary Committee will caucus at 3 p.m. upstairs in the Judiciary Room.
The gentleman of the 15th, Delegate Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will not meet today. And Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Government Organization, coming to you all with this early because we switched the meeting time on Thursday. Government Org will meet at 3 p.m., not 1 p.m., but 3 p.m. on Thursday. And the agenda will be posted.
The gentleman of the 28th, Delegate Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A number of you all have mentioned to me that you would like to be a co-sponsor on the United States Term Limits Resolution. That is HCR 9, and it has arrived and been introduced. So if you would like to be added as a co-sponsor on HCR 9, fill out the form and bring it to me. I'd be glad to sign it and add you as co-sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman of the 31st, Delegate Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security will meet tomorrow, February the 24th, at 3 p.m. in room 215 East, the Government Organization Room. The agenda has been posted.
The gentleman of the 22nd, Delegate Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Fire and EMS will meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. in the GovOrg. The agenda is posted.
The gentleman of the 54th, Delegate Hott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Banking and Insurance will meet tomorrow, February the 24th at 9 a.m. in the House Chamber. The agenda has been posted.
The lady in the 52nd, Delegate Saipo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Seniors, Children's, and Family Affair Issues will meet at 1 o'clock Wednesday afternoon in the House Government Organization Committee Room. Please bring your computers. The agenda has been posted. Thank you.
The gentleman of the 7th, Delegate Barnhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Workforce Development will meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. in the House Chamber, and the agenda will be posted.
The lady in the 38th, Delegate Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Republicans will caucus immediately after adjournment. We normally caucus at 1. We have a very short caucus today, so this will allow everyone to have a bigger break. We're going to caucus here in the chamber immediately upon adjournment.
The gentleman of the 44th, Delegate Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse will meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. in the East Wing Committee Room. The agenda will be posted.
The gentleman of the 22nd, Delegate Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Infrastructure and Technology will meet at 3 o'clock in the chamber tomorrow. The agenda will be posted.
The gentleman of the 48th, Delegate Hamrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources will meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the House Government Organization Committee Room. The agenda is posted.
The gentleman of the 3rd, Delegate Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Democrats will caucus immediately following floor session in House GovOrg. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? If not, then the question before the House is the motion by the lady from the 49th that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor of the motion will please say aye. Any opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.